This is who we are.
WAVR.
News, talk, music, get it all
24 hours
on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Port Harcourt. Good afternoon and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our top stories. Reactions drill Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko's call for resilience as the country braces for economic difficulties.
Facing its most complicated situation. Our debt is 139% of the GDP, which is very high.
African Union Commission calls for urgent international action on security crisis in Mali. Nigerian transitional president Chani insists the border with Benin remains closed despite trade challenges between two countries. And in Liberia, opposition CDC accuses ruling Unity Party of political witch hunt and mismanagement.
There were no traceable business by the two companies. Where this money came from, amounting to millions of dollars transactions, the company cannot answer these questions.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin here in Senegal, where the population has been urged to tighten their belts in the face of the economic difficulties the country is experiencing. The country's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, during a large rally held over the weekend in the capital Dakar by past the ruling party, called on Senegalese citizens to participate in the recovery of the national economy. A series of taxes levied on the population has already been implemented. These include taxes on gambling, money transfers, alcohol and tobacco, among others. Despite the already difficult economic context, why should Senegalese citizens support the government in the economic recovery effort? Babou Mesa, a Senegalese economist and lecturer of economics at Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar, shares his insight.
This effort is meant to help the government get out of its difficulties because now everyone knows that the country is over-indebted. Through this measure, the state has secured about 2,000 billion CFA francs per year over the next 3 years. So it will be an extraordinary financial contribution to relieve the public treasury, even though we will have to repay between 4,000 and 5,000 billion CFA francs. But it is a real breath of fresh air, especially since the IMF has not yet provided budgetary support, and since Senegal is facing this situation alone. I believe this effort also deserves to be made by Senegalese citizens. The goal is to avoid falling into bankruptcy, meaning a collapse of the state. We still have salaries to pay, family allowances, student scholarships, and then the issues in agriculture and flooding. We still have to manage daily needs. The price of cigarettes has gone up by at least 200 francs. It is probably the same for alcohol. Gambling winnings are also being taxed, about 20% of winnings, and so on. These taxes are not very high. In fact, these are not things that affect the everyday lives of most Senegalese. These are what we call tax niches. They are not likely to trigger any popular protest. But if the government had touched rice or bread, then we will definitely hear from the Senegalese.
We do have more on that conversation on our guest interview segment, but that was Babou Mesa, a Senegalese economist and lecturer of economics at the Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar. Meanwhile, in neighboring Mali, terrorists have continued causing a fuel shortage for the past 2 months. They are carrying out numerous attacks against tanker trucks supplying fuel to the capital, Bamako. This economic warfare, a new strategy employed by the JNIM terrorist group to cripple the national economy, was declared a few days ago by the Malian Foreign Minister Abdullah Diop. Mali has been severely affected by the security crisis in recent months, to the point where calls for solidarity are multiplying to prevent the entire country from falling under the control of terrorist groups. Sankule Janko reports.
The latest call for regional and continental solidarity to resolve the security crisis in Mali comes from former Senegalese Interior Minister Alingo Njai. In an open letter to ECOWAS, the African Union, AU and Mali's neighboring countries, he urges them to act so as not to allow Bamako to fall under the complete control of armed terrorist groups. The terrorists aim to isolate the capital Bamako, which will weaken all sectors of the Malian economy, including the Malian armed forces, says Alingo Njai. A takeover of Bamako by the terrorists would undoubtedly impact the security of all countries bordering Mali, warns the former Senegalese Interior Minister. He deplores the silence of ECOWAS and the African Union in the face of the security situation, which has deteriorated considerably in recent months in Mali, and calls for an end to a wait-and-see approach. He also calls on Mali's neighbors, particularly Mauritania, Senegal, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire and Algeria, for increased solidarity to save Mali. For months, several opinion leaders, civil society organizations and humanitarian organizations have been calling for action to prevent the worst in Mali and also in the Central Sahel. The countries of the region have been affected by terrorist crisis for a decade, resulting in thousands of deaths and displacement of millions of people.
Sankle Janko filed that report. Similarly, the chairperson of the African Union Commission has expressed deep concern over the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Mali and called for urgent international action. In a statement released over the weekend, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf condemned the recent jihadist attacks against civilians in the country. The Al-Qaeda-linked Jamaat Nasr Islam wa Muslimin (JNRM) has increased its assault across Mali in recent months. The group has also imposed a blockade on Bamako in retaliation for the military banning fuel sales in rural areas. The blockade has squeezed Mali's fragile economy, with fuel trucks unable to enter the capital. The chairperson of the African Union Commission announced severely worsened humanitarian conditions for civilian populations. He also condemned the abduction of 3 Egyptian nationals by JNRM and called for their immediate and unconditional release. In the past few weeks, several countries, including France and the United States, have urged their citizens to leave Mali. Yusuf called for an international response based on cooperation and intelligence sharing to counter terrorism in the Sahel. In Niger, General Abdurrahman Chiani has completed his tour of the interior of the country. He visited the towns of Gaya, Tahoua and Dos over the weekend, where he assured the population and local authorities of the state's effort in the fight against insecurity. He also met with the soldiers deployed in these areas who are engaged in the fight against terrorism. During his visit to Gaya, he addressed the closure of the border with Benin. More details with Francis Boniface.
Addressing the population and authorities of Gaya, a town in Niger bordering Benin, General Abdurrahman Chiani declared that the land border with Benin will remain closed. The Nigerian transitional head of state said he remains convinced that Benin is harboring French soldiers forced to leave Niger 2 years ago. Abdurrahman Chiani further stated that Cotonou also hosts Belgian soldiers and those from other Western powers whose states are allegedly financing and supporting terrorism to destabilize the AES countries. Chiani indicated that reopening the land border with Benin now would be tantamount to betraying the aspirations of the Nigerian people and their fight against terrorism. These accusations by the Nigerian head of state have consistently been denied by the Beninese government and army. Benin has always maintained that it does not serve as a real base for anyone seeking to destabilize Niger. According to Beninese authorities, the foreign soldiers in the country are there solely for the purpose of training Beninese soldiers. The closure of the Nigerian border with Benin, which has lasted for 2 years, is hindering the free movement of people between the two countries. It also affects trade between the two countries and their respective economies.
A report by WDL's Murtala Zubeiru and presented by Francis Boniface.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Still on security matters, where it is worsening in Nigeria and has triggered a wave of international reactions with Western powers voicing concerns. While China and Russia urge respect for sovereignty, the United Kingdom issued a new travel advisory. Released over the weekend, the UK warns its citizens against visiting several parts of the country due to escalating terrorism, kidnappings, and violent crime. Once again, Nigeria's worsening security climate has drawn global attention since U.S. President Donald Trump alleged a Christian genocide in the country. WDL's Usman Umar reports.
The advisory, released by the British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, notes that insecurity is spreading across all regions with attacks targeting transport hubs, religious gatherings and humanitarian workers. It lists Borno, Yobe and Adamawa in the northeast and Zamfara and Katsina among the most dangerous states, and urges extreme caution in parts of Abuja where violent crime and protests are becoming more frequent. The warning follows a threat by U.S. President Donald Trump, who accused the Nigerian government of failing to stop the killing of Christians and hinted at possible punitive action. In a swift response, Nigeria's presidency dismissed claims of inaction, insisting that the country has made significant progress in restoring peace. It said terror-related deaths have dropped by 81% since 2015, crediting improved counterinsurgency efforts, enhanced coordination among security agencies, and growing cooperation with local communities. According to the government, more than 13,000 terrorists have been neutralized and over 124,000 fighters and their families have surrendered to authorities in the past year. It also reported that over 2 million displaced persons have returned home under new resettlement and reconstruction schemes. Analysts say the growing exchange among world powers underscores how Nigeria's internal security crisis is increasingly becoming a matter of international concern with implications for regional stability and global diplomacy. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Away from security matters now, in Guinea, the Constitutional Court has published a provisional list of qualified candidates for the December 28, 2025 presidential election in the country. Out of 51 candidates submitted, only 9 were approved by the Apex Court, including that of the transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya. This announcement over the weekend marks a significant step in the political transition in Conakry following the 2021 coup that toppled Alpha Condé. Augustin Kohli has the rest of the details.
General Mamadi Doumbouya's candidacy, submitted on November 3, was one of those formally approved despite strong opposition from principal political parties and groups. According to them, the Army General has grossly violated the charter establishing the transition, which bars Doumbouya and members of the junta from participating in future elections. However, Mamadi Doumbouya's candidacy has been boosted by widespread support from various civic groups and platforms under the umbrella of the GMD25 Synergy and the Alliance of Patriotic Forces. Besides General Doumbouya, the Constitutional Court accepted 8 other contenders for the presidential race, including Abdoulaye Yero Balde, Makali Kamara, Ibrahima Abe Sila, and Fayala Sana Milimono. Others are Abdoulaye Kuruma, Mohamed Nabi, Buna Keita, and Mohamed Sharif Tonkara. The Apex Court conversely disqualified the candidacy file of former Prime Minister Lassana Kouyaté alongside 30 other applications due to administrative or procedural issues. A newly adopted constitution from the September 2025 referendum imposes an age limit of 80 years for presidential candidates, effectively barring many veteran politicians from contention. With these 9 candidates officially validated, the Constitutional Court has set the stage for a pivotal election campaign in Guinea, which begins on November 28 and ends 24 hours before the polls.
Augustin Kohli filed that report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Reactions trail Senegalese Prime Minister Sonko's call for resilience as the country braces for economic difficulties. African Union Commission calls for urgent international action on security crisis in Mali. Nigerian Transitional President Chani insists border with Benin remains closed despite trade challenges between the two countries. And still ahead in the news, in Liberia, opposition CDC accuses ruling Unity Party of political witch hunt and mismanagement. We don't have the press review, a guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org and follow live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. In Liberia, the Opposition Congress for Democratic Change (CDC) party has accused the government of engaging in a political witch hunt, corruption, and mismanagement of the country's resources. In a statement released during the weekend, the CDC denounced what it called a distractive and deceptive tactics employed by the ruling Unity Party administration to mask its massive governance failures. Tension has escalated between the two major political parties in Liberia after the 2023 elections, characterized by the face-off between lawmakers from both sides at the legislature. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The statement from the opposition CDC is in response to recent indictments of former officials under the immediate past administration by the Asset Recovery and Property Retrieval Task Force. According to ARED's investigation, more than 40 individuals, including Finda Bondo, former chief of protocol, to George Weah, were indicted on multiple charges of money laundering, theft of property, misuse of public funds, and criminal conspiracy, among others. Edwin Clark-Martin, chairperson of the task force, revealed that the former chief of protocol accumulated wealth totaling over $6.7 million and $845 million Liberian dollars, respectively.
There were several key factors who participated in all those accounts, amounting to 40 persons. There were no traceable business by the two companies. Where this money came from, amounting to millions of dollar transactions, the company cannot answer these questions.
The CDC alleges that the Unity Party government is targeting former officials of the party with what it termed as book charges as part of a calculated political witch hunt. The party says it rejects through legal and political means the cases against Nora Finda-Bondo, John Upoti, and the former minister Tiaman Duncan Sawyer, the widow of a former interim president Dr. Amos Sawyer. It is expected that the indicted former state officials will be arrested in the coming days as recommended by the Asset Recovery Task Force. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Still in Liberia, President Joseph Boakai has submitted a draft national budget for fiscal year 2026 to the National Legislature, outlining a proposed total expenditure of $1.2 billion. The budget was formally presented to House Speaker Richard Nagbekun by Finance and Development Planning Minister Augustine Pehe Ngafwan on behalf of the President. The submission complies with Section 171 of the 2019 Amendment and Restatement of the Public Financial Management Act of 2009, ensuring that the budget reaches the legislature within the required legal time frame. The proposed budget is largely reliant on domestic revenue, which constitutes 94% of the total. This includes tax revenue, non-tax revenue, a one-time meter sign-on bonus, and contingent revenue. An estimated $280 million from the budget is allocated to projects such as agriculture, road, education, sanitation, and tourism. Elsewhere in the Gambia, a naval patrol has intercepted a large canoe boat conveying at least 180 migrants. The interception took place in the early hours of Saturday, 9th November, near Dog Island during routine naval patrols within Gambian territorial waters. The boat had set off on a perilous journey across the Mediterranean to reach Spain. Online news portal Inside Gambia, citing official reports, said the group consisted of 163 Gambian nationals, 15 Senegalese, and 2 Guineans from Conakry.
This is the Newspaper Review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the Newspaper Review.
The Newspaper Review.
Well, let's head back now to Abuja as we join Usman Umar for the Newspaper Review.
Hello and welcome to the press review segment from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We begin with concerns over Nigeria's global posture and how domestic failures are inviting international approach. According to the front page of the Nation newspaper, a commentary titled, How Nigeria's Security Failures Invite Global Condensation. It argues that when a country appears weak on basic governance and security, even bluster from abroad will find, purchase. Now, the piece notes that recently comments from the U.S. sparked headlines, but more troubling is the underlying reality. Endless cycles of insecurity, fragmented responsibilities, and a government on the back foot. In the same edition, The Nation also headlined a piece titled Human Capital Development and Nigeria's Sovereignty, which stresses that without concerted investment in education and research, Nigeria cannot truly claim full sovereignty or escape dependency. The author warns that the repeated expansion of universities without boosting quality research or infrastructure is a dangerous illusion. Together, these two pieces send a common message. Nigeria's problems are not just external threats, but internal weaknesses, and those internal deficits undermine the country's standing on the world stage. Turning to business and economy, The Nation reports that Nigeria and Germany are strengthening ties with an ambition to drive the country toward a $1 trillion economy by year 2030. The story notes that the German delegation emphasized industrial revolution and innovation, vocational training, and legal labor migration as key pillars. Elsewhere, The Nation highlights a new report showing Nigeria's impact investment market is ready, valued at about $3 billion across 404 deals, although still facing headwinds such as foreign exchange volatility and inflation. On the macroeconomic front, the paper also covers a meeting between the International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, and the federal government discussing Nigeria's next 5-year growth plan and reform agenda. So we'll now turn to politics and realignment. In the Daily Trust newspaper this afternoon, there is a significant local shift. The former gubernatorial candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, in Ogun State has resigned and now joined the People's Democratic Party, PDP. That move signals two things. One, the fluidity of party affiliations ahead of future elections, and two, the ongoing jockeying for alliances and advantages at the subnational level. Now, on security front, an important headline in the Punch newspaper. The army in Borno State has rescued 86 kidnapped victims and arrested 29 terrorism suspects. And that's the much we have for you on this segment of Press Review as I hand you back to the studios.
Many thanks, Usman Mara in Abuja.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Now back to our first story on Senegal. We do have Elijah Amadou Sam, country lead, Budget Senegal, to help us unpack the current economic situation in the country. Recall over the weekend, the Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko called for citizens to tighten their belts amidst a wave of new taxes and mounting economic challenges, from rising living costs to increased levies on essentials like money transfers and consumer goods. Many Senegalese are feeling the strain. So what's really driving these economic difficulties, and how effective might these new fiscal measures be in stabilizing the economy?
The Senegalese situation is very complicated. As I said, I'm going to focus on the economic situation. Senegalese economy is facing its most complicated situation. Now the debt, in the last report, which is the Mazar report, it has shown that our debt is 139% of the GDP, which is very high. We have never been there. Secondly, we cannot raise money in the international market. It's not possible. And thirdly, internally, the economic situation is very complicated. Therefore, we have two options. Okay. So, are we going to try to fight and do our best in order to rebase our economy so that the citizen can live better? Or are we going to try to speak to the IMF because the program of IMF is not ready yet? Or the main question for me is that, is our leaders really understand the real situation of the Senegalese economy? Because I hear that we have organizing political organization and political manifestation rally, but I don't think that we really understand the real situation of the country in terms of economy.
Well, you talked about rebasing. That is a very key issue in any country's economy, because rebasing will mean like starting all afresh to ensure that starting from the zero. How would that impact on the economic life of Senegalese? Because that may be the only option if the IMF program is taking time to come through.
This will have an impact, really. But we need to have what is called the civic citizenship, a fiscal citizenship, because we need to rebase everything. Even in the government, we need to change their, try to see the salaries of some directions. Some money waxing need to be, rebased. And I think in terms of fiscality, we need to change our fiscal framework. Because all the Senegalese people, those who must pay taxes, some of them are not paying that yet. We need to re-see the foundation of our economy. And I think citizens should do sacrifice, but I think the government should do the first sacrifice for going on that.
Do you think most Senegalese are not too concerned about how the economy is, so long as the prices of bread, the prices of sugar, and the prices of rice are not touched?
If you still see money that the government is using, mainly in the National Assembly where they want to buy new cars and others, and also we don't understand that some taxes, if the population claim that they should not pay taxes, I think they don't understand the situation. The real situation that we have now is that IMF, that is the highest body in terms of economy, has pulled our program in order to give us the time to change and reshape our economic and fiscal framework. This is the first situation. The second situation is that we have a high debt. And I think that the citizen need to be sensitized according to this situation.
Elhaj Amadou Sam is a country lead, Budget Senegal. Early in sport news, Morocco has recorded the biggest victory in Under-17 World Cup history, thrashing New Caledonia 16-0 to keep their hopes of progressing to the knockout stages alive. The result surpassed Spain's previous record of a 13-0 win over New Zealand. The match, which took place on Sunday, saw a relentless Moroccan attack with Abdelali Edouard leading the charge. Edouard was named player of the match after scoring 2 goals in the first half and contributing to Morocco's devastating offensive performance. New Caledonia struggled throughout the match, particularly after being reduced to 9 men in the first half due to 2 red cards. With this victory, Morocco finished third in Group B, behind Japan and Portugal, and will now have to wait for the result of other group matches to see if they qualify as one of the best third-place teams for the round of 32. Meanwhile, the national Under-17 football team of Senegal dominated 5-0 the United Arab Emirates on Sunday in a match counting towards the third day of the World Cup for the category, thus validating its qualification for the round of 16. With this resounding victory, the team coached by Pape Ibrahim Faye finished in the first place in Group C with 2 points and 1 draw. The Young Lions will be joined in the round of 32 by Croatia. The Under-17 World Cup expanded for the first time to 48 countries, started last Monday in Qatar, where it will continue until November 27. The teams ranked first and second in each group, as well as the 8 best third-place teams will qualify for the round of 32. Germany is the reigning world champion. Nigeria is the most successful nation in this competition with 5 trophies won. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, TikTok, Instagram at WDR English. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is the flagship health program, Well Body. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New EMI FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.9 91.3 FM, Riverside County.
Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia. Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
In Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM, Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.